The Backrooms movie just released and it's open to good reviews on IMDb and Rotten Tomatoes and decent ratings on Letterboxd. There's been a lot of division though between people on the internet, with some loving it and some hating it.
This one made my confusion so thrilling. Like, entering those backrooms was so suspenseful and gripping.
This individual writes, went in with an open mind because I love Backrooms content, but beyond a shadow of a doubt, this is probably the worst movie I've ever seen in theaters, and most definitely the worst film I've seen opening day. What a disappointment, lol. They then never explained what they didn't like about it, just, it was bad, can't watch it, worst thing I've ever seen in theaters.
It's on track to do really well at the box office as well, despite its small budget. But how good is the film itself? Well, I just watched it, and so today we're gonna break it down and see how it compares to other films released this year. The Backrooms is another film directed by a YouTuber and distributed by A24, similar to Talk to Me and Bring Her Back, which was created by the Philippou brothers. Recently, horror movies have undergone this change, with a lot of the best of late coming from comedians or YouTubers. Only a couple of weeks ago we got Obsession, directed by Curry Barker, which in my opinion is the best film of the year and a perfect horror film. Curry Barker is a YouTuber who makes comedy skits, so this was pretty cool. I could ramble about this for a lot longer, but I already made a video on that, so watch it if you haven't already. Anyway, the Backrooms movie was directed by Kane Parsons, a 20-year-old YouTuber known for creating the original Backrooms found footage short film, which went viral on YouTube and led to him creating an entire anthology series around the Backrooms, which earned him over 3 million subscribers. After seeing the success and quality of the short films, A24 decided that they wanted to make it a movie. The short film series already had a huge fan base and the concept was intriguing enough to make money. So in 2025, they began filming the Backrooms. Bear in mind, Kane Parsons was only 19 at the time, making him the youngest ever A24 director. He was also given a really small budget of only $10 million, but that would have been a monumental amount considering this all started with him creating a short film on Blender, which is a completely free platform. He was also given the opportunity to work with some really talented actors, including Renee Reinsarve, who earned an Oscar nomination last year for her performance in Sentimental Value. So this kid has basically been given all these resources for his first feature film at a pretty young age. Sounds perfect, so let's just talk about the film now. The film uses a mix of both found footage and normal shooting, similar to the original short film, which is where it all started. I think some of the best sequences in the film came from the found footage parts. The first act of the film was pretty good, and I think the pre-title card sequence was very similar to the first YouTube video, and I found it great. However, I don't really think it served any purpose for the plot, and instead just acted as fan service. After the title card, we're introduced to our two main characters. We've got Clark and his therapist Mary. It's quickly established that Clark has a drinking problem, was recently kicked out of his own house by his wife, and his life has basically been going downhill since then. So we find this guy at rock bottom, working at a furniture store with 0 customers and basically nothing going on in his life. This is obviously until he discovers the Backrooms. I'm not going to go into spoilers here, but the mystery surrounding the Backrooms is really cool, and I was expecting that to be the case, considering how good it is in the shorts. However, Clark's actual approach to exploring the Backrooms is really unexpected. What I was expecting was for him to be really freaked out and the plot of the movie being him trying to escape, but I was really wrong about that. The film takes you in a direction in which you 100% were not expecting, and I really loved that because you were taken on such a fun ride. The second act is filmed almost completely in found footage, and I thought this was easily the highest point of the film. The tension was really high at times, and this was really helped by the found footage style as well as the intoxicating score. I found the score to be really good, but some fans of the Backrooms might be disappointed to find out that some fan favourite sounds weren't really used. But yeah, I thought the first 2 acts were great and were really impressive considering they were made by a 20-year-old. However, as we moved to the final act, things kind of took a dip in quality. There were just a lot of things happening which made me think, what was the point in that, or did that even advance the plot in any way? I don't know, it just got a little bit messy and all over the place. And this is something that often happens when you have a young director with loads of good ideas which they want to fit into one movie. We saw this earlier in the year with The Bride and Maggie Gyllenhaal making an absolute mess. I made a video on that too if you want to check it out. This was definitely not as bad as The Bride, but was still quite flawed. It also does that thing which horror movies do which just annoys me. Something the best horror movies never do and which Obsession didn't do and is part of the reason why it's so great. That is showing the monster. I haven't watched Jaws, but there's that phrase from Spielberg of don't show the shark. And in one of my favourite horror movies of all time, Alien, they do this so well. For example, in Alien, they don't even show the adult xenomorph for an hour and 38 minutes. And in Obsession, there isn't even a monster. And so there aren't any cheap jump scares. In Backrooms, they make the mistake of showing the monster a little too much. And it gets to a point where the viewer just isn't scared of the monster at all. Since we're on the topic of the monster, I feel I have to just comment on the design of it. I'll be honest, that shit looked dumb as hell, and not remotely scary. One thing you kind of have to get right if you are going to show the monster as much as they do in the final act of a film, you have to at least make it scary. Because when I saw that thing for the first time, I almost started laughing. And that is not what I came to a horror movie for. That is my biggest complaint, and to be honest, I feel like if they used the original design of the monster from the short, it would have been much better. My final critique of this film would be the ending. Now, I personally didn't find it all too bad, and this isn't really much of a critique, but it was just a bit confusing, and a lot of people will be left with a bad taste in their mouth after seeing it. Obviously, I don't want to spoil it, but in my opinion, it was far from great, but it wasn't bad for me. This one is pretty much up to interpretation. On a more positive note, I do think the acting was great from both leads. Renee Reinsarb in particular did really well in the second half of the film. And I do wish her character was explored in a bit more detail, because there were some flashbacks of her childhood which I was expecting to be explained but eventually weren't. Once again, going back to that idea of a director having so many good ideas and only a 1 hour 45 minute runtime to fit them in. But yeah, we've seen some really good horror performances recently with Obsession and now this. If you liked Renee in this, you should definitely check out The Worst Person in the World, which is a great film. Once again, going back to the director, I think he did really well here in utilizing these talented actors to the fullest of their ability. There was also this stupid rumor going around the internet, well, specifically Twitter obviously, that Kane Parsons did not actually direct this film, but it was ghost directed by someone else. This entire rumor started from one guy on Twitter deciding that there was no chance someone so young could have made a film as big as this. This guy had no evidence at all, and yet because it's Twitter, this became a big thing. Eventually it died down because people started to notice that this was completely made up and purely out of jealousy. This just goes to show how impressive this is though. He's made a movie with A24 at such a young age that people are outright denying that it's even happened. Yes, this is just the internet being dumb, but it's still pretty cool from his perspective. As I said earlier, mystery was used really well here. But what about horror? After all, this is a horror movie. Well, I didn't really find it to be too scary. It definitely had its tense moments, but I feel like they all ended rather anticlimactically. As I said earlier, the completely found footage second act was the peak of the film, and was also the peak of the horror. In a way, it's unfortunate that this film came out right after Obsession, as there will inevitably be comparison between the two. They're completely different, but most people would agree that Obsession is definitely better. Instead of comparing, we should just appreciate that they're both very impressive directorial debuts. Anyway, that's what I thought of the Backrooms movie. Go watch it if you haven't already, and as always, like, subscribe, and comment what you want to see next.